Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. Today's guests are co-host Graham Weatherspoon. Naturally, we're going to cover what's happening in the news. It's difficult to repeat all the things we've heard in the last couple of days, especially coming from this officer. His confession or statement of his interpretation of what happened, with no cross-examination. It's difficult to understand how this stuff can happen. You being a police officer, I'm sure you take this to heart. Whereas the questions that you would have asked, you know?
You know, that's one of the problems with the grand jury process. The district attorney controls the grand jury. It's not a trial. And the district attorney presents what he or she chooses to present.
Right.
Now, they said that they worked jointly with the U.S. Department of Justice and that they oversaw, they sat in on every interview of every witness, every assumed witness, every hearsay individual. Well, no, not necessarily, because the grand jury's purpose is not to rule on guilt or innocence.
Right.
The grand jury's purpose is there probable reason, is there reasonable cause to take this matter to a trial?
All right. Exactly.
Where all of the evidentiary material can be presented by the defense and by the prosecution. And then a jury would be allowed to determine guilt or innocence. The grand jury process does not determine guilt or innocence at all. But the DA can present what he or she, as I said, wants to present, and in the manner that they want to present it. They can slant the presentation to get the desired results. And my question is, how closely was the U.S. Attorney's Office watching, or were they even present during that grand jury presentation?
Right.
Although they were there in gathering information. And it'd be interesting to see what the Attorney General has to say subsequent to this grand jury finding. It's interesting. They showed a bruise on his right cheek.
That was a joke.
And, you know, I could slap you in the face and you have a bruise, but if you're in your sector car and a person strikes you through the driver's window, unless they are Elastic Man, I don't know how you're going to have a bruise on your right cheek when you're sitting in the driver's seat. Your left cheek is exposed to an individual outside. This is a replay of the Trayvon Martin case. You see,
even worse than that.
They brought these alleged photos of the murderer in Florida. Oh, we had a bruise here, we had this, he had that. And we're seeing the same scenario playing out here, where in a protracted period of time, post-incident, they're showing photos of what he allegedly looked like a month and a half, 2 months ago.
We were talking about Wilson, right?
Wilson.
Okay.
All right. Now, they said that in Florida, that this 135-pound boy, you know, knocked him down and banged his head on the concrete and did all this stuff. Trayvon.
Okay.
So where is it that, or what is the perspective that is given towards black men in the United States with regard to law enforcement personnel? We also had the shooting in the Pink Houses this week, a couple of blocks from where I used to live. And part of our problem is not just racism, but xenophobia. This officer in this case is Asian. And
really?
Yeah, yeah. So
the rookie?
Yeah.
That went through the house with his...
Liang, yeah. He's
Yeah.
Asian.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
evidently, he has no affinity with black people whatsoever. And he's scared. And this is a systemic problem in America because racism breeds xenophobia. Xenophobia is the fear of anything unlike yourself. And we're not saying that the problem is xenophobia. We're saying the problem is racism. That's what I'm saying. Because racism causes domino effects throughout society. It causes groups of people coming into this country to adopt the psyche of the sick culture of the country with regard to how they deal with people of color. You have people coming here from different parts of the world who definitely are not Caucasian and are darker than I might be.
But they're all told things about us before they get here.
Precisely.
We deal with most of the Caribbean people. They're told when they get here, don't mingle with American blacks.
Right.
And that's amongst us.
And what was said in the Willie Lynch letter is so true.
Right, exactly.
Because people drink the Kool-Aid
Right.
and buy into the process
Right.
and help to perpetuate the process over and against themselves.
Right.
In the shooting and we're going to get a call from Mr. Hayward
Okay.
in a little while. He's in a meeting right now, but his son was killed 20 years ago by a housing cop.
Okay.
And he'll be calling us in a little while. But for an officer to be walking around with his weapon in his hand, that is not a call that the officer has. That's a lie that they put out there. It is not the prerogative of the officer.
Now, how are you trained? What
You are
trained to do?
deadly physical force. Your weapon under the
Right.
deadly physical force statute of firearm is not to be handled in a reckless or
Right.
a careless manner
Right.
because of the potential of critically.
Here's the imagery that here's this amazing Hulk that this officer Wilson was afraid of. All right, play that Roland of the petty crime that this young man is accused of. Well, we have to talk over this, Graham. You can see that he's entering the store here. All right, now he's 6'6", 280. Now, I'm sure, now this is probably what the grand jury saw.
Which has nothing to do with the case.
Well, now the officer is claiming that he received a call that a guy with a red hat and a white T-shirt had snatched some cigarillos from a store, which is not the truth. We went over this
Right.
a month ago where he didn't know anything about this. This imagery is, now you see the kid put his back, but this is a robbery, a petty crime.
No, it's a felony. It's not a petty crime. This is a felony.
This is a felony?
It is a felony. Robbery is a felony. With or without a weapon, by evincing fear, threatening somebody, you see that? Physically pushing the man while he's trying to regain his lawful property, that's a robbery. And technically it's robbery in the second degree because he's accompanied by another person. Even though the other boy put his things back, they came in together, they left together. The other boy did not do anything to try and take the property from Brown to give it back to the rightful owner. So when a person tries to retrieve their property, even if it's a grand larceny where you just snatch it, and they try to retrieve their property, and you physically prevent them from retrieving your property, you now go from grand larceny, taking it from the person, you go to robbery. Because you're using physical force. You don't have to have a weapon. If you have a weapon, now you're going to first degree robbery. All right? Now, that was a robbery.
Okay.
That was a felony. That's a felony.
Not a misdemeanor.
Felony in any and every
Would you
case.
consider this shoplifting?
It's not shoplifting. Shoplifting is picking up something, walking out the store. That's petty larceny, and the person doesn't realize that you took it. Once a person realizes you've stolen something from them and they try to retrieve their rightful property, and you prevent them in any way, you move up to robbery.
Okay.
All right? Larceny is taking something from someone, from their person, or in an area. Doesn't have to be on the person.
So all
on
the
person
police
is grand
officers
larceny.
seeing this videotape are all up in arms, saying you had a right to shoot this guy down in the street?
He did not have a right to shoot him. The crime had already transpired.
All right. So
The
now
crime,
the officer,
there was no weapon.
but the officer's saying now he was on a call on a seeing a child or something?
Something like that. But we had this, it was established back months ago.
Yeah.
That he didn't know about the robbery.
He didn't know about it. But
He
now
didn't know
he's-
about it.
That's right.
So,
We established that right here on the show.
and the man, the grocer, when he called the police,
They said
they heard his
right.
accent and they said to him, "That's your problem."
Right.
Because he wasn't white.
Right.
That's your problem.
Okay.
And he said
So
in the
then-
press conference, the police do not respond to a call because he basically is a foreigner in the United States,
Right.
and he doesn't get the same protection under the law that white people are getting in Ferguson.
All right. Let's move on to walking down in the middle of the street, or was he close to the
Walking
sidewalk?
in the street, right?
Was he in the middle of the street? I mean, we get all sorts of takes on this. He was walking in the middle of the street, so, with the cigarillos in his hand.
Right.
And Officer Wilson comes up behind him and says, "Get the F out of the street." Now he's changed that.
Right, because if he were a suspect for robbery, you wouldn't drive up to him and tell him to get out of the street.
Right.
You would be telling him, hold it right there, you're under arrest, not get out of the street.
Right.
See, so,
So he went past them and then backed up.
yeah,
Because they didn't move fast enough, or they might have said something back to
they
him?
should have been able to present the tapes, not only coming from headquarters regarding the robbery, but regarding Officer Wilson's response to the call and indicating that he has the subject in view and is going to effect an arrest. He would give his location, you know,
Right.
I'm 84 at this location,
Right,
blah, blah,
right,
blah.
right.
I see the suspect, send me a backup.
Right.
Was there ever,
Since he's so afraid of this guy.
was there ever a call for backup?
Well, they said, Wilson said there was.
He said there was. All of those tapes should have been brought forward if there was a call. Because you got to realize, the killing takes place within moments.
Right. 90 seconds on this.
Everything relative to that case, they should have. Every call, every telephone call, every radio transmission, every response to the radio transmission, they're supposed to have it
Okay.
to present it to the grand jury. Right? I was in a situation once, I'm fighting a guy who's about 260, 6'6", and I called for a backup because we were getting ready to rock and roll. And I told him on the radio, I'm engaging with a male, blah, 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 this is my location. And that was my last transmission. All right? And then we got into it. Right? So the guys on the console, they knew my shield number. And they said, Spoon has never called for backup in his career. So they escalated it for a call for backup to a 1013.
Which is?
Officer needs assistance immediately.
Okay.
So cars were coming from everywhere. By the time they got there, I had the guy in submission. But the thing is, when you're about to engage, unless a person is right on top of you, you call for backup. All right? If
So
the guy
what
was
should
so
Wilson-
big, if the guy was so big and he was afraid,
What should he have done when he saw the kids in the street? With the cigarillos,
if he knew about the robbery,
if he knew about it. But we know he didn't.
if he knew about the robbery, he would have radioed in,
Right.
so-and-so to Central, I have the suspect wanted, possible suspect wanted in the robbery
Right.
at such and such a location. Send me a backup. I'm about to make the stop. I'm at this location.
right, what do you think really happened?
What I think really happened.
Now, he's an officer driving down the street. Obviously, he's got, you know, he doesn't like big black men.
We have to look at the pattern of violence against people of color.
Okay.
And the excuses for the violence.
Right.
Going back to
why
Los
he
Angeles.
joined the police force.
Going back to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodney King.
Right.
See, they were beating him as though he was Mighty Joe Young. And they said he wouldn't stay down. They were afraid. So every time a person says they were afraid, it becomes a justification.
Right.
The size of the individual is not justification for killing them. We have police officers in New York who are afraid. It's not a job for people who are scared.
Oh.
If you're scared, and this goes across the country, if you're scared, go sell shoes at Tom McCann. But the problem
But we
is,
know that he wasn't scared.
he wasn't scared
He just
because
got
the
mad.
first thing he goes to is the gun.
Right.
And this is the pattern. They go to the gun. The cop
You
in the
think
housing project is walking around with a gun in his hand. He was never taught to patrol that way.
No.
And he will not only lose his job, but he will be indicted because he recklessly caused the death. It's a homicide.
Yeah. Okay.
He caused the death through a reckless act. He caused the death of another individual. Because it's a dim-lit stairway doesn't mean that you shoot at somebody because they're in a dim-lit stairway. That's not a justification.
Do you think it would be no problem getting an indictment?
There shouldn't be a problem for Ken Thompson to get an indictment in this case. His actions were reckless. Reckless. And when you act reckless and cause the death of an individual, that's homicide. That's a plain and simple case. You can't say because somebody can't. You had no business walking. If you're that scared to walk into a dim-lit area, then you don't need to be in the police department.
Right. Let's get back to Wilson again. We know that all his rationale is just an excuse. He has no remorse about
None at
what he
all.
did. He's obviously, I like to see, well, all this is going to come out in the trial. I'm sure he's going to be tried for this because it's too much for any of us to take.
Well, the only way he'll be tried is if the Justice Department.
Yeah. Well, they're
brings the
going
case,
to get him.
you know.
They're going to get him. There's no doubt about it. Because this thing wasn't handled properly, and as we see, a lot of people are up in arms. But what I want to show is a couple of the reactions, and maybe we'll do some phone calls after this. But play that first piece where from Reverend Sharpton, and the president, we have the piece of what the president said. But we're going to let you people join in and give whatever comments you want to. And plus, we have a call coming on another
Right.
case. All right, so let's go to that one piece, and we'll come right back at you. All right?
And it comes after a night of violent rioting, buildings and cars set on fire, businesses looted, over 100 gunshots fired. 82 people were arrested in the area. And as I said at a press conference with the family today, those who were violent are not on Michael Brown's side. But many in Ferguson and around the country are feeling profoundly disappointed in the process that got us here. We are waiting remarks that we will hear from the president. Joining me now are Lisa Bloom, attorney and legal analyst of Avo.com, and MSNBC's Trey Main Lee. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Lisa, one day after the announcement from McCullough, there's still so much unhappiness about the grand jury's decision. How far did the prosecutor depart from grand jury standards?
Well, Reverend Al, I spent most of the night reading the transcripts, and I was so disappointed. I started with Darren Wilson's testimony to see whether any tough questions were asked of him. And in fact, they weren't. He was allowed to just tell his story, the story that he was allowed to come up with his attorneys after he was able to review all of the other evidence without any tough questions being asked of him. For example, he says that Mike Brown punched him squarely in the face, full force, he said, twice. And yet his physical, the photos of his face at the hospital that day don't reflect any such thing. They reflect a tiny bit of pinkness or redness if you sort of squint your eyes and hold the photo the right way. He wasn't asked any difficult questions about that. He was allowed to say that that community where Mike Brown lives is not well liked. Boy, does that cry out for a follow-up question. Are you saying you dislike the very people you are sworn to protect and serve? What the heck does that mean? That's fertile ground for cross-examination. And there's dozens of examples like that.
Right at that point, Lisa, at that point where he says the community where Michael Brown lives and is not well liked, he also said it was an area of a lot of gang activity and other things. Does that not set does it not in many ways reflect that he has a preconceived notion about that area, which could lead to his state of mind?
Absolutely. And when you're supposed to be talking about Mike Brown and what happened with Mike Brown, what difference does it make if other people in the community may be members of gangs? Mike Brown was not in a gang. What difference does it make if others were drug dealers or drug users? That did not apply to Mike Brown. That's who he was supposed to be talking about. And it's very clear from that comment that he was painting Mike Brown with this sort of broad brush as to how he saw the community at large. And this all in response to softball questions from the prosecutors who wanted the grand jury, for some reason, to dislike the community. You know, there's a lot of questions they ask of a number of witnesses about the community being anxious and agitated as Mike Brown lay in the street for 4 hours. Of course they were. Isn't that appropriate? How should they feel when a young man is literally bleeding in the street for 4 hours before he's taken away? But there's this real slam on the community that comes through those transcripts that's very disturbing.
Now, Tremaine, you're there in Ferguson. You've been there all day. You were at the press conference of the father of Michael Brown as well.
Now, as you can see, that's why I set it up like that. So we would give our opinion and didn't hear some of the lawyers' comment. Yeah, no, you said exactly that. How, if he got busted in the face, that he had these little... I'm sorry we don't have the pictures of his face.
Yeah, it looks like somebody just slapped him in his face.
It's a joke.
You're talking about a 200-some-odd-pound guy that punched you in the face.
280.
You know, if I hit you in your face, you're going to have a broken bone in your face. And I'm just shy of 200 pounds. So if a guy as big as Michael Brown hit you, your face would have been swelled out. As I said before, the DA will present the kind of case he wants to present to get the results that he's looking for. This is the same thing that went on in the Sean Bell trial. D.A. Brown had a mock group of assistant DAs present a case, and they had an expert witness on the stand that they were choosing not to cross-examine. How do you not challenge the authenticity of a quote-unquote expert witness? I've done trials and served as an expert witness, and believe me, the defense attorney challenged me as an expert witness.
But do you have challenges in the grand jury?
In the grand jury, see, this is what I'm saying. You don't have any challenges, but what the grand jurors can do. The grand jurors can
But do they know they can do that?
That's a good question.
Okay. They don't know that.
That's a good question. A grand juror can sit in the grand jury, and if something doesn't make sense to them, they can write the question down, hand it to the jury foreman, who will hand it to the DA to pose that question to the individual on the stand.
Right.
So we don't know what instructions were given to the grand jury.
And normally this grand jury is secret.
It's secret, and this is the problem.
Well, why is this happening then, if it's supposed to be secret?
Remember, she made another good point.
Yeah.
They gave all this information. You do not give information to the defendant.
Right. Oh, that's right. Okay.
All right. This is not a trial where you have to turn over all the Rosario material. That comes subsequent to an indictment, wherein now we're going to trial. There's material we are obligated by law to turn over to the defense.
So according to all this, in anybody's law book, this prosecutor is bound to lose his job.
Let me tell you, there's enough here for Eric Holder's office to step in
Put him
and
in jail?
backhand slap the whole process.
Okay. And replace the police department.
Well, if there are enough allegations which can be substantiated with regard to the activity, the criminality in a department, the Justice Department can and has in the past gone in and removed entire departments. They've done it. They've done that here in New York State.
Okay.
They didn't do it in New York, but they've done it upstate.
And we have Nicholas
Nicholas
on the
Hayward,
phone. Yeah,
Senior?
he's on the phone. Now we're going to go to another case here. Chime in, Nicholas.
How you doing, sir?
All right. Thank you for calling. Thank you for calling. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Nicholas Hayward, Sr., the father of Nicholas Hayward, Jr., who was shot to death by a housing officer 20 years ago in Red Hook in the Gowanus projects. Can you speak up, please?
Yes, hello?
Yes, we can't hear you.
Turn it up a little bit, please.
Okay, yes, I'm hearing you now. I'm hearing you now.
Okay. Mr. Hayward, could you tell us what you're feeling, what you're getting from the events of the last week here, not only in New York, but also in Ferguson, Missouri?
Well, from the last 20 years, let me just go back then, things have gotten worse in regards to police brutality, police murder of innocent unarmed black men and women. And since my son's case, I mean, I've been out there vigorously. Laws need to be changed. I mean, situations like when the young man that was murdered in the pink houses of rookie officer shooting into the darkness of a stairwell in a public housing development where there are hundreds of families that live in it are constantly coming in and out of their apartments, dumping garbage, coming up and down the elevator using the stairwells. I've been living in a housing complex for over 40 years, and there's constant movement. I don't care what hour of night it is, but there's constant movement. Mm-hmm. And to have a rookie officer on post at a little after 11 o'clock, that right there shouldn't be.
We lost him.
Who knows one officer or one day and you see another one and next you see another officer. There should be an officer who gets to know the community. If you want to have a relationship with the police department in the community, you have to have a regular officer doing patrols so that they can get to know the people in the community. That's my take and my feeling. My son was shot also in the stairwell. The officer shot into the darkness without even saying absolutely anything. And he also shot after my son said, we were only playing. He was in the stairwell with a group of kids. At least 5 kids were there when my son was murdered by the officer. And I use the word murder because the officer should have been charged with criminal neglect, homicide, just like this officer here who shot this innocent man in the pink houses.
Commissioner Bratton was the commissioner at the same time that your son was killed, correct?
Oh.
Say that again, Grant.
Commissioner Bratton was the commissioner at the same time that your son was killed 20 years ago.
Yes. Yes. Bill Bratton was the commissioner at that time. Bill Bratton also, back in 1994, hasn't done or said anything in regards to the innocent lives that were taken when he was first commissioner back from 1994 to 1996. I campaigned vigorously denouncing Bratton that he not be allowed to be the police commissioner of New York City based on the fact that all of the innocent lives that were lost back in the early 90s where he hasn't done absolutely anything. He hasn't held accountable. He hasn't reached out to any of the parents or absolutely nothing. Even in this case right here, he's making statements already saying that it was a tragic accident and the gun went off accidentally. then he's going to stay behind Wilson, although he's saying that he hasn't yet spoken with the officer yet. So how are you going to speak like that? You haven't with the officer who actually shot this innocent man.
Well, this happened just recently. This,
Yes.
how many days ago was
Last Thursday night.
this? Last Thursday. All right. Well, we've yet to hear most of the details on that one.
Now, could you tell us about the event on Friday afternoon at the Harlem State Office Building?
We're having an event.
Okay.
It's actually, I mean, a lot of parents who lost their loved ones over the years are still mourning the thing, including myself. I mean, it pains and hurts me every time I hear of an innocent, unarmed victim that's being gunned down, who isn't committing any crimes, hasn't doing anything wrong, but yet his life is being taken by someone who is supposed to be, or what they tell us, is supposed to be out there protecting us. So we're calling for all of the parents in New York City to come out to the Harlem State Office Building at 2 p.m. on Friday, so that we all can, in a collective, or in a whole collective of parents and family members, let the public know that we have been forgotten. There hasn't been any justice in any of our cases. And I've been doing this with quite a few parents. Iris Byers, Margarita Rosario, whose son and nephew Anthony Rosario was executed in 1995 while laying face down on the floor. Iris Byers' son was choked to death. Juanita Young, her son was shot point blank in the head back in 2000. These parents here hasn't gotten any justice in any of their cases. My son, the officer who shot my son, in a deposition done on him by my lawyer, he contradicted all of Charles Hines' reasons and findings in closing the case and never presenting it to a grand jury. The officer himself who shot my son said that the stairwell lighting was not dimly lit. He said things didn't happen in a split second, and he was not on a 911 call. All of those were the three reasons why Charles Hines closed the case and didn't present it to a grand jury, and basically blamed the plastic toy guns that the kids were playing with, which, mind you, looked at absolutely nothing close to a real weapon. But what Charles Hines also did during his press conference in justifying this, he had a table full of black, realistic-looking toy guns to justify his closing this case and not holding the officer accountable, opposed to showing the public in his interview or whatever, instead of him showing the plastic gun that the children were playing with, which looked at nothing like a real gun, he showed guns that looked at real. And that's why I vigorously, always, I'm always out here, with the parents and with the family members. We are just sick and tired of having to bury our children. Michael Brown was my son.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric Garner was my son. These are black people of color that are constantly being gunned down, and these are always happening in poor minority neighborhoods. Why aren't these neighborhoods being lifted up so they will no longer be poor minority neighborhoods? Remind you also, housing development is owned by New York City. New York City, why is these housing development, why is there no centers or places where the youth can go to develop a strong mentality to be productive and successful in society? Why are there no after-school programs? Why is things being closed on our youth? What are your real plans for black and brown youth of color? What are your actual plans? Because from what I'm seeing, it's the prison system. You're putting police inside the school system. You're locking them up for little things where they should be just basically disciplined or giving counseling. There are more police in school than there are counselors inside the school system. Why is that? I can't put that together. I just can't put it together. But this event that we have on Friday, we're hoping to get as many families and parents out there as we possibly can to let the world know that we are still here and we are still seeking justice. There have been a grave injustice done on all of these families, and every time another family suffers a loss of their loved one to the police, the next they go to the bottom of the list. The case is just completely covered up. I just now got off of the phone about a half an hour ago with News One. They also was asking me about the event we're giving on Friday.
Right.
And she went as far as to ask me, were there going to be any parents of note out there on Friday? I said, yes, there is. I'm going to be out there. She said, oh, no, Mr. Haley. We're talking about someone who's recently lost their loved one. So that right there tells me that they are not even no longer concerned with the injustice of Nicholas Haywood Jr., of Anthony Byers, or even Ramari Graham.
Yes.
None of these, all of them are like under the rug now. We're looking at Mike Brown and Eric Garner, the other 12-year-old that was just recently killed, also in Ohio, playing with a plastic with a BB gun, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Was he
13 years old?
That are out there right now, and they just completely washing away the other case when there actually has not been any justice done in any of those cases. And also, mind you, also that means that within the next month or so, Mike Brown, Eric Garner, and the young kid from Ohio, they also will be.
Oh no!
They wouldn't be recognized of parents of note.
Well, we want to thank you for calling in. I mean, your sentiment is shared by all of us, and I mean, we that haven't lost kids can sympathize, but they don't feel like you do. I mean, your outrage is well warranted, and we all feel it. But this violence that's coming out, that doesn't do anybody any good. You know?
And that's why the people in Ferguson are rising up. They are no longer, they are tired, they are sick and tired of innocent.
But see, even that, I think somebody's behind that.
Like that.
Well, I'm sure they didn't burn their own church. There's a church there, that Father Goes To. Michael Brown's Father Goes To was torched, and he had received threats. We've heard that the Klan is out there. We might even find Officer Wilson, a Klansman. I mean,
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah. We might find that out, or white supremacist or something. Everybody noted that that's a racist state. All right? We've heard this comment time and time again. So we're dealing with racism. And we can see how they're treating the president. That's nothing but racism. So it's all around us, and there's no qualms about it.
All right, Nicholas, we have some other people holding. I want to thank you for calling in on short notice. And we'll see you Friday at 2 p.m. in front of the Harlem State Office building.
I thank you so much, Brother Graham, and I admire your work. I always have.
Well, God bless. I can only try to empathize. I can't imagine what you're going through.
Right.
I can't imagine it. Thank you very much. God bless. Have a blessed day tomorrow. We'll see you Friday.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Next caller, please. Sorry to keep you holding, but... Next caller.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. You know who that is.
Who's
Can
it?
you hear me? Yeah.
Is that you, Danny?
Yeah, that is. Listen, I'm tired of everything I'm hearing.
Why is he on the phone?
Why would you put Danny on?
Listen, I want to speak to the ex-detective back there.
Are you human? Are you a human being?
Listen, if that guy came into your store, would you blow his head off or not?
Cut him off. What are you guys having fun with us out here? Next caller, please.
Yes. Hey.
We can't hear him.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, you got to raise the volume. We can't hear him in the studio.
Yeah. You're calling from Harlem?
Yeah?
Yeah, I want to say hotep to you, Brother Gilchrist and Brother Graham.
Hotep.
I want to say I always call in. I'm really hardcore on Al Sharpton, but the press conference yesterday, I was sort of very, very impressed.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was a wonderful press conference. I seen his heart. My spirit toward all this violence is that black people need to raise their voices, the celebrities, the black cops, the black detectives,
the black trial lawyers, all black people who are conscious who see this, and the ones that keep their mouths silent, they're part of the problem.
Right.
But we all know that's not going to happen, and we all know Obama's washed up, and we have to look at it like that. But my question to you, and I also want to say, Brother Graham, thank you for your service as a cop, and I can't imagine.
You're welcome. Thank you.
As being an NYPD officer, under your training, what is the difference of your training and all these white supremacists? It's because you have a pure heart and a pure spirit. But my question to you is, what is your 10-year prediction? I want a 10-year detailed prediction of this onslaught. OTEP, reinstate automatics, be well.
All right. 10-year prediction. It's not good. We have a police department which orchestrated the exit of the neighborhood cop years ago, and it was done by the PBA in conjunction with lobbyists in Albany. So you don't have to live in New York City, which is one problem. Number two, under Ray Kelly and Bloomberg, we had stop and frisk, which brought about the illegal search and seizure and the criminalization of young men in this city of color who ordinarily would be eligible for any civil service job. And through that process, and you have to understand racism and how it works. It's not about sitting at the lunch counter. It's economics. By doing what they were doing for 12 years under Bloomberg, because our people failed to get out and vote, they could victimize our youth, thereby denying them the right or the ability to take a position as a police officer, a teacher, a firefighter, sanitation worker, because of criminal background. So what we are going to have a big gap in the employment of young black men in this city, young men between the ages of 20 and 30 who could be going into civil service will not be there. We need young black men and women to go into law enforcement. A lot of them will not be able to do it, which will allow outsiders from New York, from Westchester, Rockland, Nassau, Suffolk counties, where they pay higher rates of pay for policing than they do here in New York. It will allow them to continue to get the jobs. So it's going to take 10 or 15 years before we can bring up young men who can step up and take these positions. And it's not enough for a person to become a police officer. They must be given to study. You must seek to move up in the ranks as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, as a captain. I spoke with a lot of young officers. They don't want the responsibility. That's a problem. You have to assume responsibility for yourself and for other people. If we don't have leadership, we cannot control the behaviors of people. When I was a detective, I didn't have a problem prosecuting a police officer who broke the law. I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't have a problem putting in check chiefs and inspectors because I had that legal right to do it. So we're going to have a long period here where we're not going to see minorities coming into the police department because of all the stop and frisk. They will be eliminated in the process in applying for the job. So we've got a long road to hoe, and we've got to hold our elected officials to the fire. The mayor, the way things are going, he might be a one-term mayor, all right? Because he was not present. He was not present when we were advocating against stop and frisk 12 or 13 years ago. He only got on board with this program when he decided to run for mayor. So we have some hard work to do over the next 10 years.
Well, you know what we're going to do? I have the president on the tape, and we're going to listen to Blessing from God. You're going to find history will tell. I mean, well, they talked about Malcolm, Martin, any of our heroes of today were ridiculed while they were here. So you got to die before, well, hopefully Obama will be here 30 years from now. I'm looking forward to when he stops being president, he comes down and helps us in the hood. You know,
Well,
he's going to be.
I'd like to see
you know,
his memoirs when he writes the
you
memoirs
know,
about what's really
this
going on in
this
there.
man,
You know?
as far as I'm concerned, now this comment this last character made about being washed up is absolute nonsense. I mean, let me deal with the part. Let me get my point across first. Now, him being washed up. Now, that's about as dumb as I've heard anybody say anything about this, because of the fact that he's got 2 years ago, he's got the Klan to deal with. Now, you want to see a black man dealing with a problem. Look at our president. He's being treated like this because he's black. I had a comment from some idiot last week about he didn't like Obama because his mama was white. So I'm getting all this flack about Obama, and I ran an old tape that we did. Well, you said it wasn't important that he was a black man. All right? So, I mean, it's beyond me. I see it as not being brainwashed, but I just see, I prayed to God. I mean, it's a blessing to me. That's why I say it all the time, because I'm just elated, because I just watch how he handles this stuff. And I admire, respect how he deals with all the junk. We don't know what's going on in his head, or what was really going on, and what he has to deal with. You know, being black is, it's how we deal with it personally.
Joy Behar was being interviewed earlier today, and she said, what President Obama is going through, he wouldn't be going through if he was white.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's Joy Behar.
Yeah.
You know, she put it out there very clear,
right.
very simple.
So
The treasonous acts that have been taken against him from the day that he was inaugurated have not been dealt with, and they won't be dealt with because of the people in government and the people running the Congress at large.
we only have a few minutes left. We only got 10 minutes left. So look, play a few minutes of President Obama. I want to show you how he's trying to heal the country. All right? Just play that one piece.
Illinois, and hear President Barack Obama.
Hello, Chicago. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody have a seat. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Happy early Thanksgiving, everybody. It is good to be home, although it's cold in Chicago. It was 60 degrees in Washington. It's not 60 degrees here. Let me begin by thanking the Copernicus Center. Dzień dobry to everybody. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. I hope you don't mind, because obviously there's a lot of stuff in the news. I actually need to begin by saying a few words about what happened over the past day. Not just in Ferguson, Missouri, our neighbor to the south, but all across America. As many of you know, a verdict came down, or a grand jury made a decision yesterday that upset a lot of people. And as I said last night, the frustrations that we've seen are not just about a particular incident. They have deep roots in many communities of color who have a sense that our laws are not always being enforced uniformly or fairly. That may not be true everywhere, and it's certainly not true for the vast majority of law enforcement officials, but that's an impression that folks have, and it's not just made up. It's rooted in realities that have existed in this country for a long time. Now, as I said last night, there are productive ways of responding and expressing those frustrations, and there are destructive ways of responding. Burning buildings, torching cars, destroying property, putting people at risk, that's destructive, and there's no excuse for it. Those are criminal acts. In and people should be prosecuted if they engage in criminal acts. But what we also saw, although it didn't get as much attention in the media, was people gathering in overwhelmingly peaceful protests here in Chicago and New York, Los Angeles, other cities. We've seen young people who are organizing and people beginning to have real conversations about how do we change the situation so that there's more trust between law enforcement and some of these communities. And those are necessary conversations to have. You know, we're here to talk about immigration, but part of what makes America this remarkable place is being American doesn't mean you have to look a certain way or have a certain last name or come from a certain place. It has to do with a commitment to ideals, a belief in certain values. And if any part of the American community...
There's a lot more to that, but we're running out of time. It's we got 4 minutes left. But maybe perhaps we should have played more than that. But I mean, here's a man in the top position. I mean, this is a lifelong. At my age, this is a dream to me. I mean, he's younger than my oldest son. Okay. All right. So I got a son 4 years older than him. So this to me, I mean, he's my boy. I mean, he's my man. I mean, I just like the way he deals with things. I don't know what else goes on around there. And he's got a beautiful wife. I mean, you don't get any, it doesn't get any better than that. He's got two beautiful daughters. I mean, as a human being, he's absolutely top of his game.
He raised the bar for any presidential candidate in the future. And what we're seeing is only to be expected because racism is the problem. But why
do black people not understand his struggle? I don't understand that.
A lot of black people thought that he was going to be the miracle worker for black people. He wasn't running as the president of black people. He was running as the president of the United States. And I often tell students, all right, he's the president. Now, what are you doing?
Right. What are you doing?
Because he doesn't live in your neighborhood.
Right.
He's not showing up at your door.
Right.
You know, everybody wants to know, what are you going to do for me? What are you doing for yourself?
Amen.
All right? People say, I'm not voting because they're not doing... Precisely. You don't vote, and no one's obligated to do anything for you because you won't vote.
That's right.
So their attitude is the devil with you.
Right.
But what are you doing?
Right.
Everybody has a mentality. A lot of people, not everybody, have a mentality that someone's supposed to do something for them.
The get-over
syndrome. You got to do it for yourself.
That's it.
All right?
A guy came up to me, he said, I wanted Obama to get us reparations.
That's not happening.
He didn't get us reparations. He's mad at him because he didn't get us reparations? Are you kidding? Health care. He barely got health care for. And if my mother died of cancer because she couldn't get help, and I was president, that'd be the first thing I'd do to make sure everybody had health care. Right. People don't even understand why he fought so hard for health care. His mother died because she couldn't get help.
Right. Now, if you want reparations, stop spending your money. That's a very simple way. Stop giving your money to the people that are pissing in your face. Stop spending your money. People are going to get up tomorrow to go run down to Target or wherever they're going to run to at 6 o'clock in the evening to spend their money with the people that are pissing in their face.
Right.
Reparations, stop spending your money. Simple enough.
And if we collected reparations, how much
they would give it right back to the very people that are pissing in their face. All right? We don't need somebody to do something for us.
You do something
we have
for
to
yourself.
do what we need to do. Reverend Minister Farrakhan said this at the Million Man March, and I was standing on Capitol steps when he said it. For all that you say the white man is doing, whoever that is, what are you doing?
That's right.
What are you doing?
Right.
Don't worry about what this person is doing, that person is doing. What are you doing?
Amen.
Where you are. And if you're not doing anything other than complain,
Hey. You know, here at the Gilchrist Experience, we try to cover up-to-date. Well, this experience is what happened this week. Well, this week, a lot has happened, and we need to look into our own souls and what you're doing for yourself, and in particular, what you're doing for us as a people, as human people. Stay fair and stay strong, and vote. God be with you, and the God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned next week to the Gilchrist Experience.
Friday,
God
2
bless.
p.m., Harlem State Office Building.